So the astrology of the week of 23 August 2021 to 29 August 2021 continues this theme of changing reality. We're in a kind of shifting sands moment as we leave the heights of summer and now we're moving towards fall. Venus and Saturn will continue their auspicious trine relationship, Venus in Libra, Saturn in Aquarius, and we'll get this 3-planet stellium in Virgo that again highlights and magnifies this very mutable or changing energy. Let's get into the charts. Let's get into the week. I'm S.J. Anderson. I'm astrologer S.J. Anderson. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to this week's forecast. What I will do in the video is start with an analysis of the planetary aspects, the sign changes, the stations. I'll look for then, so second will be the moon sign changes. We always examine that as astrologers to understand that lunar energy as it's so important, it's so close to us. The third thing is I'll check in chronological order some of the key charts I'm examining this week, the charts that are on my radar. And then finally I will pull a few tarot cards, some cartomancy, to just understand the week symbolically, a little bit more symbolically, a little bit more of a divination, of course grounded in the astrology. So that's the video. Welcome to the video. And yeah, this week there's these continued themes, as I've been talking about so much recently, where we're now mapping into mutable Virgo season. Mercury is there in Virgo. Now there's 3 planets in Virgo, so we have a stellium there. So we're really overweight, in a way, mutable energy. And if you add the lunar nodes, those North Node in Gemini, South Node in Sagittarius, we have 5 of the 9 major traditional planetary points in mutable signs during this moment. And I always like to think about mutable energy, as the energy of wearing 2 hats. Having to kind of change and be ready to mutate as a verb there. We have the immutable signs, but that verb mutate can really capture the essence of the mutable energy, the ability and the necessity to have to change and shift. And so we're in a period, I think, where, at least astrologically, that is certainly highlighted. And I think when we look at the outer world, that's the case too. You know, as we get in the northern hemisphere to colder weather, you know, this is a time when respiratory illness season comes. I mean, there is a sense, I think, especially after those 3 syzygies we had, all Saturn ruled, a succession of them in Aquarius and Leo. We had a full moon in Aquarius. It was very close to Saturn. We had a new moon in Leo, very closely opposite Saturn. That first full moon in Aquarius was not too close to Saturn, but still it was in that mix and co-present with Saturn, because Saturn is also in Aquarius now. Then the new moon in Leo, which was closely opposing Saturn. And then we had that final new moon in Aquarius. Hasn't happened yet as of the recording of this video, will happen very soon. But that is going to be ruled by Saturn and co-present with Saturn. So there was a resurgence of the Saturnine, of the Saturn dominance in the sky, and then Jupiter came into Aquarius during that period. So it's a much different world from 6 weeks ago, and we're changing, we're shifting and changing out of that middle part of the year 2021 and into this fall moment in the northern hemisphere where we're kind of hunkering down. There's a real sense of that energy. And there's also a sense of the unknown. You know, people don't know. I'm seeing news articles. Will schools happen? What's going to happen with the policies that are in the air? So there's a lot of just shifts and unknowns. And that's that mutable energy. You may be forced to mutate and change on the fly and be prepared to do that during this period. So let's jump in here. Let's get into this. Well, one other thing in the introduction is just the Venus strength until 10 September 2021. Venus is in Libra, and it's home of Libra. We haven't had this strong Libra Venus for some time. So I think we've got some at least Venusian supports right now as we're navigating the unknown. It might be time to get into the relationships, get into the pleasures as a real way to soften whatever shocks or changes that you're undergoing. Just know that. Remember, Venus is beauty. It's adornment. It's the external things we bring to beautify the environment, to make life that much more bearable and palatable. So that's very strong now, and it can support us in this period of unknown energy. So let's come in here. The first part of this lecture or talk here, we've got Venus to trine Saturn here right out of the gates this week. It'll happen on Monday at 2:48 in the afternoon in Central Europe. So we kick off the week with this I think it's quite auspicious with Saturn and Venus. I'm going to go all into that in the talk here. It's one of the charts I'm going to look at. But I have here, we can structure reality so that it's beneficial in the long term. Beneficial, or it's, supportive, and, the kind of Venusian supports that we think of, where it can feel good, it's nice, it's comfortable. Setting ourselves up for some longer term comfort. And it's cardinal Libra energy that has a ton of support. So it's a very powerful force, because Libra, the cardinal signs themselves are extremely potent. They're the initiation of energy. And I was doing some research this week on Capricorn, Cancer, that axis. Cancer is the rising sign of the Thema Mundi, the birth chart of the world that ancient astrologers considered. And so it's got this very powerful energetic with Cancer, and then Capricorn being on the axis. It's that Saturn moon energy. The moon is closest to us, Saturn's closest to the gods, and there's this kind of loop of maybe a Saturn moon. You've heard some people say the Saturn moon matrix. There's some theories about that, but setting those aside, just in astrology, we have a Saturn moon kind of enclosed loop of reality of the planetary spheres, and you see that with the Cancer Capricorn axis. And especially that Cancer is the rising sign of our astrological chart, our birth chart for the cosmos. So when you have Libra then and Aries of course being the new year, the new astrological year, but Libra is a powerful initiating force for the fall. And right now it's very strong with Venus there, its ruler, and then the exaltation ruler Saturn and Aquarius, very strong. So this air trigon has quite a bit of strength right now. And the ruler of Gemini, Mercury, is in Virgo. It's the sign it rules, the other sign it rules. So all three rulers of the air trigon are now in their domicile. And so it's setting us up for just a powerful moment, I think, this week and into the ending of this summer period. Remember what the air trigon is. It is thought. It is communication. We say words, they go through the air into the microphone, through the wires and the electricity out into your computer or wherever you are. So it's very much about ideas, images, symbols being transferred, knowledge, thoughts being transferred from one consciousness to the other. And so then you bring in the relating side to that, and that's the Venus, where you have two people, one that is transferring a thought or an idea, and then the one that's being transferred to, the transferee. So that exchange of thought brings in relationship. And of course, Saturn, idea is the foundations of reality. Whatever the ideas are, it can form the whole reality. So it's very necessary for the structure of reality, thought. That's why Saturn has such dominance in the air trigon. But that's here this week, considering what are our ideas, how are we relating, what are those basic structures of our reality formation. We kick off the week, Venus, trine, Saturn. I'm going to get into that deeper, more than I just did. But it's mutable season. It's after the height of summer. The sun will also conjoin the north bending. The only other aspect this week is the sun will square those lunar nodes at the north bending in Virgo. And it's a marker that we're directly between eclipses. That's an important part of this week's energy. It's a mutable moment on all fronts. The north node energy is expansive. It can sometimes be understood as expansive in a destabilizing way. It's too much into the reality, too much into the physical manifestation. And then we're forced to realize that it can be hollow and kick back into our spirit and our spirituality. So the nodes are always a spiritual force. And I think here, just thinking about this halfway point between the intense eclipse periods, we had that June, May eclipse season, and then we're halfway through that. We're going to have a November, the first eclipse in Taurus, along the Taurus-Scorpio axis. We'll have a lunar eclipse conjoining Algol in late November, and then in early December we get the final eclipse in Sagittarius, putting to bed the eclipses on the Sagittarius-Gemini axis. So, sometimes when you have the sun hitting those bendings, you can, trigger up the eclipse story. It's just a good reminder, I think, to just check in. How are your eclipses? How is that part of the chart, coming to an end with the Gemini Sagittarius, the beliefs, the words, the language, again, the air signs, the mutable air signs, that kind of upheaval may be transitioning, and then we're going to shift now. So you might even want to start getting ahead of this new eclipse season. What's Taurus mean for you? You know, the body, the self, I'm going to talk a lot about Taurus in this talk because it's coming up this week as a theme. So just know it's a kind of a check-in moment with the sun. Remember, the sun is key for eclipses. It's the sun and moon. Syzygies near the nodes are eclipses. So the sun is a central player in every eclipse, and that is what is at the bending here. So it's in some ways, you know, the halfway point. All right, and then we have the thinking about life, planning with Mars and Mercury in Virgo. Remember, the sun is with Mars and Mercury. And so there's that great planning power with the sun being with the north bending as we're in between eclipses. I think there's something here about planning for action that it can be understood with this Virgo season of Virgo 3-planet stellium. So let's move. The next thing I'm going to examine, this is the moon's sign changes. And the thing about this week, we've shifted now for so many months, for however many weeks it was. We had the moons, every weekend the moon was finishing the week in a fixed sign, starting the week in a fixed sign. That's now over. And instead it shifted to the mutable axis. The moon starts every week in a mutable sign. This week it starts in Pisces. And then the moon comes into Aries, Taurus, and then finishes the week in Gemini. So it's an interesting shift. Again, it's representative, I think, of being in mutable season. This is another reason. Of course, every week has the moon in every mode, but we kind of start and end in that mutable moment. At least in the Western world, and even in China, I've lived in China and really all over, Sunday is kind of a day of rest. That new day kicks off on Monday often. So there's a kind of a weekend feel, and then the day of the week. And you even think about the global trading markets, they settle down at Friday, open up on Sunday evening. So there is a kind of a quality where you have a Saturn day of maybe a rest day, or and some Sunday of a rest day, depending on where you are. And so when we do have these weekend moons to finish a week on Sunday and Monday, I do think there's something symbolic there, personally, even though the moon is in every mode during the week. But so we finished with this Gemini moon. The thing about it is the moon is safe from Mars and Saturn while it is in Aries this week, and we're going to look at that chart later. But that's the good thing about the cardinal signs. They're malefic free until Mars enters Libra in September. Actually, when is that exact date? I know I shouldn't have this memorized because we're close enough there now. I believe it is in September, but let's get the exact date up here. I'm going to animate. Just jump into my solar fire. If some of you out there want solar fire or want astro software, this is the kind of benefit of it. You're able to animate the chart here and capture this exact moment. So it is September 15th. It looks like when Mars enters Libra, 5 days after Venus enters Scorpio. So that's the moment where the cardinal signs then have to deal with a Mars square, opposition, or conjunction, depending on the cardinal sign in question. Until then, until September 15th, these cardinal signs, when the moon is hitting these cardinal signs, it's completely free of the nodes of Saturn and Mars in terms of the square, opposition, or conjunction. So we can really dig into these moons. Now, one thing about the moon, and I'm going to go back to the PPT, This is Astrology 101. This is Astrology 101, and particularly Electional Astrology 101. You do want this moon safe by aspect from Mars and Saturn, but the ruler of the moon is really as important. And you always want to have a moon's ruler that has some strength, that has some power and strength. And so in this case, it is that Mars in Virgo. Mars in Virgo is not too strong, but it's with Mercury. So there's some mitigation with Mars being with the ruler Mercury. It's with the sun. So I like that blend. I like that stellium, those three planets mixing with the Mercury, the ruler of Virgo, with with Mars. So anytime a planet is with its ruler, co-present, it's a great mitigating force for that planet. It means that that planet is kind of serving the ruler and has a direct support from Mercury, and kind of gives it an extra mercurial edge to that Mars. We'll talk more about that too. But so this is that Aries moon. The Taurus moon has got some unique issues, but it is the only Taurus moon with Venus and Libra this whole time. So although it is square Saturn from Aquarius, because Taurus is a fixed sign, Aquarius is a fixed sign, Venus is in Libra, giving that moon some tremendous support. And you know, so there's some opportunities, I think, with this, with the moon here. And let's see what else here. I think that's all I was going to say. I think this Taurus moon has that. It's just good knowing it. There's no more moon. The moon will come to Libra with Venus in early September. To me, that's a lot better transit here, because both the moon and Venus are safe, and it's a waxing moon. So there's really a sense of growth with that Libra moon that comes in early September. That's really the one I have my eye on. This is not one that I have my eye on for, you know, maybe very auspicious Venus energy. So let's move here. That's my idea of the moon this week. Actually, the one thing I wanted to point out here, this is Tuesday through Friday all have an Aries moon, and that midweek Aries moon is you'll see my transit of the week. I'm really gonna lean into that Aries moon this week and try to get productive. Okay, so now let's shift to the third part of the talk, the chronological ordering here. Or the fourth part if you count the introduction. I think in my YouTube notes I've been creating those chapters for you so you can just click ahead easily. This would be the fourth part of the talk if you have the introduction, planets and aspects, moon sign changes, and now we're here at the chronological order. Let's just break down these charts in order. The first chart, Monday, 2:48 p.m. here in Central Europe, and this is that Venus-Saturn trine. So I've picked here a Sag rising. Actually, it'll be Sag rising when it perfects in my location. The moon will be right with the midheaven in Libra. Quite powerful with any time a planet it's closely conjoined the midheaven. Very, very, very powerful energy. But aside from where in your location, it will not be conjoined the midheaven. Likely it'll be, Venus could be in anywhere in any of the houses. So I'm not going to delineate this midheaven conjunction. The key thing here is that we still have a Saturn-Venus mutual reception. Libra is ruled by Saturn, by exaltation. So Saturn is exalted in Libra. And during the daytime, Saturn is the triplicity ruler. So in this chart, in the daytime, you will have Saturn ruling by exaltation and triplicity. And sometimes I like to consider triplicity rulers even if it's not day or night, just especially when delineating for the whole world, because half the world will have nighttime and half will have daytime. And so it's still a powerful sign for Saturn here, Libra, not only because of the exaltation, because this triplicity connection. And then look where Saturn is. Saturn is in the terms of Venus still, moving very slowly. And so we have this exchange. Anytime there's a mutual reception, these planets need each other. So Saturn and Aquarius here needs Venus. These degrees of Aquarius are Venusian. They bring beauty, they bring connection, they bring love, they bring pleasure, they bring joy. So it's a kind of a really sweet spot here for Saturn and Aquarius, a benefic so-called area, especially when Venus is strong in the sky. And so Saturn needs Venus, and then Venus needs Saturn here. And what it means, and then they're in this direct perfected trine aspect. And so, you know, I think the other thing about it here is that Mars and all other planets except for Jupiter are reverse. And so as this aspect perfects, you have the two benefic planets with Saturn mixing, being this very auspicious air trine. And I have here boundaries and relationships are essential. This is my delineation for this aspect. It can't be underreported or underemphasized. Setting clear boundaries with others allows for the flourishment of a relationship. In fact, when those boundaries are loose or porous, it, in my experience, can breed resentment. People don't get needs met because they're unknown. And behaviors can propagate and kind of linger, that are unsatisfactory to the people in that exchange. So when you have boundaries, it can very much support, like water in a container. Those boundaries support the water being held, and the water then can be enjoyed. You know, and so it's in your life as this aspect perfects this week. You might want to think about, you know, do you need to express a need? Do you need to separate from someone? And that's the other thing I have here. Separation can generate an ability to relate. Separation can be a very, very key in terms of knowing who oneself is. And I did this in my life. This came up this week. I was talking to someone about my a period of my life, I took a break from my family. I just said, listen, I need to separate. And it was recommended to me by someone who had done that with her family. And I just needed some interpersonal healing. And so I took a lengthy period off, a year actually, 1 full year, deliberately. And I just basically cut my family. Now I let them know I was doing it. I said, hey, listen, I need to take a break. And I was in therapy. And it was one of the best things I ever did, because when I re-entered the relationships, and by the way, I'm not advocating that you do that. It's very a difficult choice to make, and it's I think situation by situation, and it's personality by personality. It fit my personality to do that, and it was really what I needed. I was processing my whole life up to that point. It was right around my Saturn return, right after, and I just said, listen, I'm going to peace out for a while. And when I re-entered the relationship, so that's the key thing here, there was a whole new appreciation that I had for myself, a whole new understanding of who I was, my own autonomy, and then the people I were relating with. There was a whole new respect for the preciousness of each moment we shared together, you know, because it might be the last. Someone might cut off or cut away, and so, you know, the thing here is, what the other thing I was going to say here, I can't remember, but just that this separation can be essential for relating. And it doesn't have to be so dramatic as a year, but maybe a weekend or a week. You can say, I'm not going to talk to this person, or just separate out to get to know someone, you know, to get to know yourself, so that you can then bring that full self into a relationship. It's just another aspect of how Saturn and Venus can very much support each other. So, and even if you think about Venus as beauty and creativity, sometimes we need to get alone to be with our creative powers. It's hard to create sometimes in the chaos of relating, in the chaos of people being around us. So, okay, so that's my little spiel, or my musings on Venus, trine, Saturn, and the benefics are here with Saturn. So I think it's very auspicious Saturnine connections. Let's look at the fixed star. During this moment, Venus will be conjoining Diadem. Diadem is in the, let's see, Bernice's hair, I think is the name of this. Coma Bernice is what this is called. And it's a very interesting constellation and myth around this constellation, a theme that I'm going to return to later. Part of the theme of this week is Venus as a kind of the warlike nature of Venus. Venus is not always just pretty and pleasure. Sometimes it can be the ways that we kind of forcefully protect pleasure or forcefully go after pleasure, you know, desire being the sort of the root of a lot of difficulty. Venus can sometimes be the desirous side, and when we have pleasure, we want more. That's a problem for a lot of people. I've had problems with that in the past. You know, so, but this myth is all about the wife of Ptolemy here had these beautiful locks. She promised a god that she would cut those locks off and put them at the temple if Ptolemy would be saved in battle. And it worked. But you know, the king was furious that his wife's, you know, the lovely hair was removed, and then it was stolen. And what happened was they went to an astrologer pointed to the heavens, and the hair was, I guess, stolen by gods and put in the sky as a constellation. The point here, though, is that beauty is something we may sacrifice in times of great disturbance. And I think that the theme is that with Saturn Venus, sometimes beauty is found in the most simple things. I mean, like during these lockdowns that people have had, you know, you had a lot of people, no beauty parlor, no massage parlor. You know, there's not a way to get the comforts that one had formerly had access to. So there's like finding beauty and letting the hair grow. I grew my hair out during this period, and the kind of beauty in the natural, which can be Saturn, can be of the earthy kind of natural side. Natural in the sense of undisturbed growth of a landscape. And just that agriculture. Saturn does signify agriculture, but we're out in the fields. You know, there's a very naturalistic, down-to-earth energetic. This kind of, let's say, comely. There's an adjective I can't find right now, but it's the beauty in nature and then the natural flow of things, as opposed to the kind of really done-up beauty that can sometimes feel fake or plastic. I think that that's where Saturn and Venus can very much support each other. And again, hair has to grow. I mean, there's no shortcuts. That takes a long time. That requires Saturn to have lovely hair. And so we can think about the boundary that you would set with yourself. I'm not going to cut my hair. And then you get hair. You don't cut it. You restrain. That's Saturn. So that's part of the theme of this week. The restricting the desire to kind of primp and letting things go in a more Saturnine kind of slower pace, out of necessity often. So let's move here. I'm going to go to the next chart. This is the 29th of August, Thursday, very early in the morning, so Wednesday there in North America. This is my transit of the week. It's the Aries moon, the waning Aries moon, and the Mars-Mercury planning vibe. I've been talking about it. It's even more so triggered here because the Mars-Mercury co-presence and conjunction, though separating, still rules this moon. So it's not only that the moon is ruled by Mars, but it's ruled by this blending of 3 planets. Because like I said, anytime you have a co-presence, it's a blend. And so what I have here is, this is a good time. It's waning energy, first of all. So those double lunar eclipses this summer in Aquarius, we're now waning and settling down from that energy, really settling into the mutable sense of change and shifting into what will be the fall. Hopefully great out there for a lot of you on a collective level. Maybe this fall, let's hope it's okay. But we're in that transition month with Mercury and Virgo season. So I have here considered action. I love that for Mars Mercury, the adjective considered. That means we think carefully before we act. Like chess moves. When you think about the chess moves, 2 or 3 moves ahead before one would act. I have here soft night sect energy. Mars is of the night sect. The moon is of the night sect. Venus, Mercury is not. It can change. Currently, Mercury is an evening star, so it is maybe more of the night sect. But it's the idea here, and also this is a big point. This week, Mercury will now be, Mars is falling under the sun's beams. It happens very early this week. Mars will not be visible. That is a very night energy. It's a very kind of a suppressed or hidden energy. So when we think about chess moves and considered action, sometimes we don't want to let people know what we're doing or what we're going to do. That's just a useful strategy. There's that scene in The Godfather where he says, never tell anyone what you're thinking. He tells that to, in The Godfather Part 3, he tells it to his Sonny's son. I can't remember his name right now, but it's played by the actor, Garcia plays the actor, and it's a great movie. I love The Godfather Part 3. Not one that's considered one of the better Godfathers, but Vincent is the character's name, and he tells Vincent, never let anybody know what you're thinking. That's very much a Mars under the beams in Virgo, co-present with Mercury energy. And that can be useful sometimes. If we're out here telling people, it can dissipate the energy of plans. And remember, this is waning. We want to keep energy in and just settle the energy during a waning environment. So holding things in, being a little bit more secretive. Mercury comes, no, it's out from under the beams now, and then for a while. But this is that Mars being under the beams energy. So also it's opposite. The thing I love about this moon and why I picked this moon over the Taurus moon, basically I don't like sign-based hard aspects to Saturn. So I'm always gonna demote charts that have that. But this chart has a sextile to Jupiter and makes the aspect to Venus. So it's doubly witnessed by the benefics. Whereas that Taurus moon, it is ruled by the very, very strong Venus. And we love that. But there's something about both Mercury and Saturn and Venus, Mars, Saturn, and Venus, where when the planets are when the planet is in a sign that it rules, it's averse to the other sign that it rules. And that's a whole other exploration. That's a whole philosophical exploration. I think it has to do with the nature of Venus and pleasure. Sometimes pleasure can take us into it and we're kind of blocked off from other things and other parts of the life. And Mars is the same. Mars is that passion in that same way. So, but there's a lot of benefic support with this moon, and particularly in these later degrees, it passes Venus and then it makes this sextile to Jupiter. It's applying to a sextile to Jupiter. I just love this chart. So this is my transit of the week. The planning, the kind of hidden moves, the chess moves, get into that waning energy this week. All right. And then this is the Taurus moon. So this is on Saturday, 28 August. Let me just make sure, yeah, this is in chronological order. This Saturday moon anytime I have me, you guys that have been watching this long enough, I love to look at when the moon is enclosed between malefics or benefics. And always the ruler is important, and is just as important or more important even than the moon's aspects. Actually, I think they're both important. They're equally as important. But setting aside the ruler, it just gives the moon this kind of extra focus, either negative or positive focus, when it's in between benefics or malefics, within 7 degrees on either side. Last aspect, next aspect of a Ptolemaic aspect. And so this Taurus moon has Venus as the ruler. We love that, but here it is. It'll be a few hours here, Saturday, early in the morning, so Friday night. Once the moon hits 11 degrees, it's now applying to Mars fairly closely, and it will between 11 and 15 degrees with this moon. So that's about 8 hours. This moon is in this malefic enclosure, and I mention it here because it helps us understand Taurus, the sign of Taurus. That's what I love about these lunar mansions. There's so much about understanding the significations of the tropical signs. I find it to be almost the best tool for signology. You signologists out there, you meme astrologers, go to these lunar mansions. I think you'll find some themes to meme about. But here we know the moon is under pressure. It's exalted in Taurus, but it's under pressure by separating from Saturn and applying to Mars. And so I like to examine what these astrologers who've written about the lunar mansions, they talk about what it's not good for, what this mansion isn't good for. It says here, not good for marriage, friendship, real estate, building, wells and mines, or traveling by the sea. Its essence is enmity, struggle, conflict, argument, anger, or violent passion. Which isn't it quite contrary? We might think, well, wow, this is where the moon should be exalted here in Taurus, and the Taurus is a Venus-ruled sign, a benefic. Well, this is where you start getting into ideas of every sign has a dual expression, a positive and a negative. Venus is, on the one hand, a benefic, but Venus can be a dark side as well. All benefics can be malefics. All malefics can be benefics, depending on their configurations. And so when Venus goes bad, these are the kind of things you get. You get struggle and conflict and argument and anger. Remember, Venus was the planet of war, going back to Babylon, because we fight for passion, for pleasure. That's the root of what wars are fought over. We want more land, we want more resources, we want to feel, more laurels to rest on, and we're driven to war, we're driven to conflict. And so I think this is a really great example here of kind of the darker side of Taurus. This lunar mansion, Aldebaran, it's actually Aldebaran, though not in the Taurus constellation anymore. This star Aldebaran is now in Gemini because of precession. It is the eye of the bull, and I think that's where some of these darker significations come in, because that Aldebaran star is like Mars. It can be a very martial kind of power energy that is, struggle, conflict, argument. That's where I think that comes in. But I still think, even though precession has moved the fixed star, it does teach us about Taurus. And you can see here what's it good for. This is the Earth Venus, work, craftsmanship, trade, and that kind of that work side of Venus, the craftsmanship side of Venus, making things that are beautiful through crafts and through the Earth sign, creating with the Earth. You can see how that's also a Taurian energetic, and the earth element can sometimes be referred to relating to trade. You see that maybe more in a tarot tradition, but Mercury does rule Virgo, an earth sign. Mercury is business and transaction. So anyhow, this is just so setting all that aside, on Saturday or Friday night in North America, just know the moon's under great pressure. Maybe you stay in on Friday night or try to go out early and then settle in and weather this potential relationship challenge that comes, or these struggles that are going to come with this Taurus moon. So Warnock here, I wanted to quote you Warnock. This is all from lunarium.co.uk. I have the Warnock books. I own the Warnock books too, and their quotes here are pretty much one-to-one here. But he says, the contest of wills, again, we're fighting over what we want. Venus as the trigger for warfare. Countervailing forces, there's one thing I wanted to see here. That's pretty much it. I wanted to come back here to the this idea of contest of wills. That's the key thing, either physical or emotional. We can succumb to those contests physically or emotionally. And it's very much Venus. I have here Venus is the planet of war in Babylon. People fight for pleasures, desires, comforts. It's part of Taurus and Libra. It's part of what Venus does. In Libra, Venus maybe wants to make intellectual concordance and agreement to prevent those wars. But when they go bad, when agreements break, people go to war. Read about World War I and World War II. It's all about alliances that then force conflict. Okay, let's move. The last chart of this week, 29 August 2021, Sunday. This is that sun squaring the nodes at the north bending. And the bendings are very simple. The north node is when the moon goes above the sun. The path of the moon is above the sun. So at the north bending, the moon starts bending down at its point highest above the sun. So it's the north bending. When the moon hits the south node, it goes under the sun, and then the south bending is when the moon is at its lowest point, turning north. So it's the south turn, you might think of, and that's the south bending is currently in Pisces. That's when, and we had that Pisces season with those south bending conjunctions earlier in the year. So anyhow, going back here, the Virgo stellium is highlighted. The Mercury is the ruler here of both the north node in Gemini and then the stellium. So 4 of those points are ruled by Mercury. While Mercury is very powerful, it's just underscoring what I said already at the beginning a couple of times in this talk. So I won't dwell on this too much, but it's the changing, being prepared to change as needed, as necessitated. I have here as keywords malleability being a huge asset. And keep exploring. You know, Mercury signifies fun. It signifies, I always think of that, the theater and the image for actors, those masks. And Mercury can be miming, and you see in the most ancient texts where we're faking things or acting with things. You may need to do some acting this Virgo season. You may need to put on your tap shoes, and when you're around certain people, behave a certain way, or be planning some of your next moves with that Mars under the beams. But it's the malleability, the asset of malleability. During a time with the North Node in Gemini, during the time when the Sun is in Virgo at the North bending, things might get strange and require, with the intervention of fate, require you to be shifty and maneuver, you know, and as is necessary. So that's all I'm going to say. I talked already a bunch about that. You know, and actually one other thing I'll just point out about this chart, you see this stellium is 3 planets that are in aversion to Libra, Saturn, and Jupiter. So there's kind of 2 stories in the sky right now. You have the air trine, the lovely Libra Aquarius air trine with Jupiter and Saturn and Venus, and then you have this shifting Virgo energy. And I think it fits with our world. I mean, we're in a transition, but remember the slowest moving planet is Saturn, that fixed Aquarian energy. We're still in the midst of all the crises that 2020 brought, and then now we're grappling with it into 2021. You can see it, just turn on the news. That's still front and center, the crisis we're in. And so this mutable shifting energy is kind of in this larger context of these other aspects. But there might be a sense of 2 worlds right now. Hopefully you can keep a distance from the worst of that other narrative, because once the Sun, Mars, and Mercury get into Scorpio later in the year, they're all going to be there together. It will, and squaring that Saturn, I think we're going to not be able to avoid some of the Saturn story, the Saturn energetic. You know, we're going to be confronted with it maybe more directly. And that's why I think it's another reason why this is a good planning moment, because you might have some room to make a chess move or to consider how you want to act in a very deliberate way. All right, that's the weekly astrology. Thank you for being here. Now we will pull some tarot cards. I'm going to move somewhat quickly. This is the first card. It is actually, let me get it set up. I've got to get my random number generator set up. Some of you haven't watched this before. I use random number generators. They're perfect for sortilege. It's the perfect sortilege, a computer program, and I found it to be kind of pure sortilege. Pure randomness is almost more divine in a way, because that's the point of a divination. You want to not have human error that can maybe tip the scales, in my view. So, all right, let me get this first card. Okay, the first card is let's see what comes up. So often, as you know that I've watched this, you guys that watch this regularly, it's uncanny how often the cards here, okay, I got wrong folder. It's so often how these cards match the story of the astrology. So this is the 5 of Hearts, the deceit card, Mars and Scorpio. I was thinking about this. I've been thinking about this card recently. I was just thinking about this card because It's one of those cards that you might think, hey, Mars and Scorpio, this is a positive card, but in the tarot traditions, Five of Hearts has a kind of a rough reputation. I named it Deceit. My deck that I've named, I did all this way back before I was an astrologer. I did this in the first part of the 20 teens when I was just a tarot student and I became a tarologist. I made my own deck, and this is what I use. I'm going to be selling these on my website. Hopefully this fall I'm going to get all that up and running. They're prototypes, they're not final products, but they're definitely usable. Then you can order them. I used a company that now lets you set up a store through that print service, but it's the same company I used to order these decks, and I would use them. They're very, very good quality. So anyway, come back to the reading. I think it has to do with the nature of Mars and the nature of emotional conflict. Scorpio and Mars are conflicting energy, and I've thought about this as the deep-seated sense of emotional kind of programming that we were given in childhood. That becomes a deep driving force in our lives, and often we don't want to go in and admit that. We don't want to see the truth because it can be too painful. And so we kind of have to lie to ourselves often and to justify the actions that we take. There's a sense of self-deceit that's required to function in a way. So there's that side, and it can be useful. The other side is that when we act, sometimes we don't want to, like I said, show our full hand. I mean, depending on the context of your action, you don't want people knowing what you're thinking. I mean, this fits with what I was saying earlier, Mars under the beams. You kind of sometimes want hidden motivations. I'm not advocating deliberate and outright lying to people in a way that's ethically wrong. What I'm saying is, it's better to sometimes, I'm trying to think of a scenario. So like if you're in a business negotiation, they teach you this, it's the basics of negotiation one-on-one. I mean, you will never let people know what you can actually do or what you actually have. And that's just the art of negotiation. It's not really unethical. It's assumed when you're in those environments that that's what people are doing. So it's kind of good strategy and good tactics. And even in relationships, I think about Mars signifying sex and relationships. Sometimes we don't want to go in on like a first date and say, here's all my trauma, and write on, you want to relax in my experience and just get to know someone in a light way. And there's times for the disclosure of the deep martial and scorpionic stuff in our lives. And so I think that's maybe this is what this is pointing to. It's that Mars under the beams ruling that Aries moon. The only other thing I would say is, well, I won't say that there. I was just going to say the South Node, those eclipses that I was talking about earlier, that there will be in Scorpio with the South Node in 2022. And then that moment when Mars and the Sun are in Scorpio in November is also, I think, this is a portent of all of that. Scorpio is going to be big in the second half of the year and in 2022. We're going to have time to talk all about Scorpio and explore that deeply, 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 deeply. So I'm excited to see that card. Let's get the last card. Let's get this last card and finish the reading here. This is my Tarot Marseille card. Wow, this again. So this was the card, same card last week, the same card this week, and it may have even been 3 weeks in a row. I think it's either 3 in a row or 3 out of 4. That the card I'm pulling here is the Earth Knight, the Knight of Coins. And that is super significant. It's almost like the deck here is telling us we've been building into this very mutable Virgo stellium moment. And then you see the Knights, they're always about going out, going beyond the element is one way to think of it. There's some mutable features there, but I think about it as letting the element kind of overtake you so that it can transform you. That's the Knight energy. It's almost like pardon me, when you, what's the example? If you do something every day, you do it every day, you let it break you down. If you've ever been like in a boot camp style environment, I was in a yoga teacher training. Boy, that broke me down, man. I was working on like a farm and doing yoga all day. It was one of the best things in my life, but it forced me to kind of go beyond what I thought I was capable of. That might be the best phrase here. Go beyond your capacity with respect to your earth element, your Virgo, your Taurus. We've talked about that a lot for this week's astrology with that Taurus moon. What is the earth element? The body. It's the moon. It is the physicality and materiality. So we were talking about trade and building and constructing things. I just think about looking around at your physical body. How's your health? Might be good to check in with that. How is your home life? What can you do to shift and adapt right now with those things to get ready for the fall? So that is the tarot reading. That is the weekly astrology. This is S.J. Anderson. Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming to my channel. You can support me by liking and subscribing the video. You can always go to my website, sjanderson144.com, and schedule an astrology reading, a tarot reading, or you can support my Patreon. Helps keep the videos going. Have an awesome day. Talk soon.